Well, the recording is running.
It's running. Hello, Nikita.
Hello, Vasily.
Welcome to Happy Maybe. Happy Maybe, a podcast where two friends talk about pursuit of happiness and other adjacent topics. And today
you have something for me.
I will offer you a topic. The topic is it possible to be truly radically honest? How about that?
Okay.
So
say more a little bit about this. I have so many thoughts. I always do, but let's start here.
Yeah.
Why do you ask?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, it's one thing that we touched upon in private conversations before, and it's a cool one because it sounds like a virtue that you can train yourself to have. Be as honest as possible and see what happens, and let the consequences shape up the rest of your life exactly in the image of your true self that has no filters and says things that don't make other people feel comfortable by design, but only as a random consequence. But at least you stay true to yourself and don't need to pretend to be in a good mood when you're not, to be in a bad mood, to be more menacing, or I don't know, whatever it may be. It's like less acting, more realness. That's how it's positioned. And also it made me think of the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. So few of them are about that. For example, conceal your intentions. That's to be powerful. Always say less than necessary. So much depends on your reputation. Guard it with your life. So some of these laws, they talk about as if in order to be powerful, you need to be less open and honest. And that's counterintuitive because what do you think about this, by the way? What is radical honesty? What is true honesty in expression for you?
You always have a tendency to drive conversation into a more philosophical, abstract
You have a story?
Direction. And I definitely have thoughts, and I'd love to have a philosophical conversations about it. I have a few ways of answering, and I have a certain answer. I just have an answer for myself to the question that you started. However, what I am really trying us to do more of is to be more personal.
We'll get there.
And so I guess I would answer. Yeah, I guess I'll answer with. I think that there is a misunderstanding of. What's the word that you used? Radical honesty, right?
Yes.
So I think there is a misunderstanding of what is honesty exactly. And in Buddhism, there is a concept of right speech. There's a right action and a right speech. And what's interesting about the concept of right speech is, and I honestly couldn't find it, honestly, mind you, I couldn't find what I was looking for. There's a list of properties that the right speech should have to be right speech. And the list isn't just say the truth, or when we think about being honest, we think about saying the truth. The list isn't just about saying the truth. The list it contains to not say lies, right? So saying lies or exaggerating stuff is an aspect of not being true. So that wouldn't be honest. However, the right speech is a bigger concept that includes things like, is this the right time to say what you want to say? Do you have the right intentions to say that what you want to say? And so, for example, if you're, the example you gave me, like saying less and guarding your image, doesn't have the right, well, one might say, doesn't have the right intentions.
I can remind you what right speech is made of. I just looked it up. It's no false speech, no slander, no rudeness, and no gossip. That's this basic sort of list of things that will help you with the right speech.
Pretty much. And I'm going to try to make it more personal, and that's going to be difficult. So is it important to me to be radically honest? I don't know how to answer this. I've lied before. I've lied before to guard my image, 100%. I've exaggerated or I hid details when it was good for me. 100% have done that. I have gossiped before. I've done all those things, of course, because I'm a human. Would my life be better, happier if I didn't? It's not really clear to me. I do believe in the idea of, I remember reading in a book somewhere, and I don't remember the reference, but the idea was that every person has a public self and a private self. And then the book introduced the idea of a secret self. So the public self is the one that everybody can see. The private self is the one that you and the closest people to you can see. And there is a secret self as a part of you that literally nobody knows about. And if you think about yourself being a single whole person, like the idea was to narrow the gap between all three and ideally eliminate the secret person so that there is no part of you that is secret that you can't share with close friends. And the public version of you ideally gets closer to the private version of you. In practice, it's difficult to do, but this would be a part of, like, imagine being really, really honest. That would mean that there is no divide between your private self and your public self. Whether or not it's a good idea, I'm not sure. There are jobs that require public image, and it's a good thing. Like, you don't, like, for example, imagine a kingdom and the king would say everything that the king has to say about every private detail of a conversation that they have. That would not be functionally a good idea. You would not feel safe having a king like this. And in fact, part of being a leader is creating certainty in the uncertainty. So you are experiencing uncertainty and you make decisions around it. And if you follow a leader or you follow a king, you don't want to know necessarily every single thought that they had. So would this be a good idea to be radically honest in this case? Not sure.
Yeah. What if it's a knee-jerk reaction? What if you're in so-called bad mood and somebody asks you, well, what do you think about the song I wrote? Or what do you think about the movie I recommended to you? And in that moment, you genuinely don't like whatever that was. Like, I hated it. I really didn't like it, So you could be radically honest in that moment. Say, I really, really couldn't care less. It was not interesting at all. But then a couple of days go by, you think, you know what? Think about it. It was pretty good. I watched it again. I listened to it again. It was not so bad. It's like, okay, was it worth it to be radically honest in that moment? Or wouldn't it have been better to kind of smooth it out, take your time, and then respond when you truly have some, deep thoughts about something? Or, how are you? I'm not so good because I slipped and fell or whatever, but ask me 5 hours later, I'm just fine. So was it worth it to raise it? Was it worth it to be radically honest and share exactly how you felt in that moment? Maybe not, right? So, but if you're always radically honest, I don't know, like in a work environment, I don't like that manager, and I'll tell him in his face, whatever. Is it smart, to like just bring your personal attitude to work environment? Yeah. So I, as you can say from my examples, I'm waving on the side of not being radically, unapologetically honest in the moment.
Where did you get this idea to begin with? And I'm still super curious, what had you bring this to the conversation? Why does it matter?
It's in the list of topics that I wrote down for the podcast, and it's number 12, so I thought it's a cool number. But you wanted to have some kind of story of why it came up. Well, there's always something. It's a daily thing. I'll tell you another story. A friend of mine would not agree to go to any restaurant with me, and he would tell me that he used to work at restaurants and he was traumatized by the experience because he was like a lowly waiter and he didn't like to be in that environment. He didn't like to be in the kitchen and in the dining room and all that stuff, and therefore he doesn't want to go to restaurants anymore, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, the reason really was that he didn't want to spend money. So he couldn't tell me that because it was a little bit shameful for him. So he started making up stories that were going around that. And I thought, just tell me the main reason. I'm not going to judge you. It's going to be fine. It's either I'm going to pay for it or we're not going because I know it's not comfortable for you. Just don't create additional stories that don't help the situation. Okay, that's one example.
To me, this is an example of where the intention behind lack of honesty is more important than lack of honesty itself. So as often I find that the question itself, when the phrasing is changed properly, has a better answer. So the question you started with, which was, is it a good idea to be radically honest? Kind of missing part is,
or is it even possible?
First of all, is it possible? I guess maybe, but also why? Why is the much more important question. So you can be
because I believe it's a virtue that's universally regarded as important. Just be honest.
Is it?
Turns out maybe more in folklore than in action.
There are many social situations where being radically honest is frowned upon.
It's a suicide.
Well, it's a suicide, meaning yes, like everybody's going to know how shitty of a person you are. But I am more about if your older mom asks you how she looks in this new dress, and you like, yeah, mom, you're fat and old. You look shitty. Stop asking me these stupid questions. Because that's kind of, that's true. That is radically honest. But again, honesty is not.
It's radically honest. Could be
necessarily virtue in itself.
Yeah, but I like how you steered it towards right speech. I think it's a lot more relatable and useful toolkit than just speaking your mind.
And here I have to bring up again the concept, the practice of circling that I started with in, I think, the first episode we had, because circling is a practice where there's no instructions on when you should speak up and what you should say. I found often for myself that I'm not entirely sure what to say and when to say it. And then I had to start asking myself why I want to say it. And then I thought that I wanted to be honest. And then I discovered that if I were to be really, really honest, it would not bring any good. So I started evaluating my
no happiness.
Yeah, the average happiness in the room wouldn't be particularly high. But even if it wasn't so high, it would also not be the new way of measuring it I discovered for myself was I started calling it useful. So instead of saying the right speech, I'm saying the useful speech. So if I'm saying this, is this, useful to me or to anybody? If I'm saying this truthful thing, is it going to be a good idea? Is it going to be useful?
Is my dishonest comment going to be useful? We're crossing the line into moral dilemmas, like, is it okay to lie if it makes the situation better and brings happiness? Hey, lunch is coming in 30 minutes. I never made a call. No lunch is coming.
I had this experience when I was at the monastic academy in Vermont for 3 months. I remember I was very sad and I just decided to stop talking because I didn't feel like I have anything to say. So I thought, I'm going to stop talking. So instead of choosing, is it truthful talking, not talking, I decided just be silent. And so they had this little tag that you put in yourself that said noble silence. And noble silence means that you're silent. And so I did. What I discovered was that I was part of every conversation in my thoughts. If I could hear two people speaking, I immediately formed opinions about the people speaking, and typically my opinions were quite critical. And I also had a conversation and a comment about everything that any one of them had to say. That was a disaster. I'm trying to be silent while in fact I am speaking. So I think that the line between mental speaking and actual speaking is relatively arbitrary. There is this framework called IFS. We talked about it earlier, where the idea that you are not a single individual, but you're a collection of parts, and all these different parts are different, almost like different characters in the video game, all taking up different roles. So one of the roles is the role that let's call the manager takes up, that decides if what you just thought should be spoken or not. And so I think that it is a lot more important to discover the thoughts that you're having than deciding whether or not to say them, because even if you don't say them, they're still there. Why am I saying this? I had a point, but I lost it.
I like this. It's a nice wrap. It's coming back to, it's not to be confused being radically honest. It's not the same as impulsive expression. It's more of a signal, because you don't have to be radically honest with other people. You can be radically honest with yourself, which probably is a lot more useful. Because if you can see what manager in your head receives what kind of folder with what kind of ideas, and they are uncomfortable or weird or evil or whatever, okay, well, that is what
probably very judgmental.
Yeah. Well, that's what the manager has to deal with. Where do they come from? Why is it even on the docket? What are we reviewing here? So I think it's important to be radically honest with yourself, and IFS certainly helps.
I'm so looking forward to us talking about IFS one day. One of the blog posts that I had early on was titled Stop doing the right thing for the wrong reason. In it, I was trying to emphasize that there's many things you can do. You can meditate, you can go to church, you can do all those socially acceptable good things like donating money and volunteering and being radically honest. But you can do all of those things for the wrong reason, just like you can do the socially unacceptable things for the good reason. There's not really, I don't believe that, I don't want to go into the moral relativism because that is too intellectual of a conversation for me, and I don't have a good answer.
But I think there's some good thoughts, good extractions that I'm happy we touched on. And as always, we'll leave our listener with a few open loops and hopefully closing. We close the couple.
Close it up. Thank you, Vasily.
Until the next time. Cheers.